Welcome to How It Works with Holger. Today, again, with an episode that focuses on FlexCel, a tool that allows you to create Excel documents, to read Excel documents from Delphi without actually having Excel installed. And what makes it even better, it is one of the best reporting engines that I've seen so far. Today, I would like to show you how to create a simple list report with FlexCel that is based on a list of objects. And this report will be based off a template that you can create with Excel. You can also create your templates without Excel. But the key here is that you can use Microsoft Excel to design the template for your report so you have all the power, all the functionality of Excel and can use it to generate your reports. Once again, you might have seen it in other examples or videos that I've shown. I will use the track music, Apple Music demo that I prepared. So you can search for an artist. I'll search for Michael Jackson and select him from the list of people that are being found. And then I get a list of all the albums that are Michael Jackson albums. I double click on the album. There's the track listing. And this is what we'll focus on today. I have a list of tracks on 2 discs. So this is one of those albums where you have 2 CDs. This is disc number 1. Here is disc number 2. And this is the track listing. And the print button is what we will implement today. That doesn't mean that you actually have to print it, as you can see here. Instead, we generate the report and we are able to generate this report as a PDF or as an Excel document or just preview it on screen. The preview, by the way, will be a separate video that I'll create. But this is the report that we're going to create today with the album cover as the graphic, with the album title, the album artist, and also with text. This album doesn't have text, so let's pick a different one. Let's pick Thriller, for example, print, and here we have more text, multi-line text with formatting. The formatting is HTML, so you can even use that kind of stuff in FlexCel. FlexCel automatically generates the text for you if you use HTML. Italics here in this case are the only formatting being used, but the full HTML language is supported. And here we have the track listing. Let's get on it. As with any architecture of an application, there's 2 ways to start. You either start looking at the data model or at the user interface, which is the report in this case, which shows the data from the data model. I decided to start with the data model. So we have 2 classes in play in this example. Number 1 is, of course, the album that contains a list of tracks right here. So the property tracks is of type T tracks, and T tracks is a list, an object list to be precise, of track. And if we look at the track class, there we have all the different things that are supposed to appear in our report. But also we want to show some information about the album. For example, we're going to use the artwork and we're going to use the name of the album. And I think here are the notes. And I always wrap my things into custom data type. For example, artwork is T artwork. And that is just a helper class because Apple provides these things from the Apple Music kit that you have the height, the width, the URL, and the actual image as a T picture. But I'm not going to focus on all these things. The only thing we're going to focus on is the fact that we have 2 objects, or 1 object, which is the album, and the album has a list of tracks. And FlexCel, thankfully, is very, very flexible, meaning you can just use for your reports any sort of data model that is either just a simple object or a list of objects, or you can also use data sets, something we love in Delphi. However, in this case, I can spare the time to transfer the data from my objects into a dataset because FlexCel is able to use the objects directly. And what you have to remember is that your classes have public properties. And these properties are what FlexCel uses to link the information of your objects to the template, or to the report, I should say. So in order to create a report, what you do is that you tell FlexCel, I want to create a report and I want to use this data model. And then you use the template to tell FlexCel, the report engine, where to put what information from your objects. So this leads us to the second step, looking at the template. I already hinted at this, that the template is nothing but a general Excel sheet. And this is what we're looking at here. I increased the zoom quite a lot, so you have the ability to see this quite well. This is not as big. So you notice right away there's quite some placeholders, and that's exactly how FlexCel works. So here, this HTML tag resembling syntax with a hashtag is an identifier, and I can set these identifiers. For example, this is the identifier album title, and this is the identifier album artist name. You have the ability to set these values from your Delphi code. So in order to set the album title, the album name, and the album notes, I simply call from Delphi set these values. And in addition to specifying which values you want to see, you can also use certain defined tags, which you find in the documentation. For example, here, hashtag HTML true means that the content of this cell are being interpreted as HTML and the formatting is being adjusted accordingly. So if your data in album notes, your string contains HTML, the formatting of that HTML will be applied. How do you define where something appears? And this is what makes FlexCel so powerful, in my opinion. It appears how you define your cell in Excel. For example, this one here is a pretty good candidate. You see that I merged multiple rows, but also in addition to that, I can go to the format cells and look at the alignment and see that I checked wrap text. So that means the text actually is being wrapped by Excel or FlexCel. It's not being wrapped by you using certain logic. No, you simply apply the value album nodes and everything happens automatically. And the same goes for the row height. That means everything is done by the report generator. Everything is being fit automatically. Another special case is the image right here. How do I create this? Well, I simply insert a picture and select a dummy image. And the dummy image here is actually just a blue rectangle, a PNG file with a blue rectangle. The key is up here in the left corner, a name. In Excel, you can assign names to cells and objects. And the picture object gets the name hashtag album cover with the HTML brackets around it. And this way, once again, we can address this object from our Delphi source code. And also the second one here, again, taken straight from the documentation, hashtag image size, makes certain that the image is being resized so that it fits nicely according to its proportions. That's the key thing. It's not going to be stretched in some way. According to its proportion, it's being fit into this rectangle. And then, of course, the blue image will disappear and it will represent the data that we set into that. So that is the first step. And this is where I'm going to stop explaining the template. I'm going to skip over to the Delphi code first. So looking at the Delphi code, I showed you the data model with the album class and with the track class. So now we have to get it all together using here the generate report method, which is getting called when we click the print button. I wrap this once again into a special report class that I created myself. The reasoning for that is, if we look at the class right here, at the definition, that I not only wrap the functionality from FlexCel, but write my own report class around it that I can get a PDF and an Excel document easily. That's the only reason why I do this. And I have helper functions to load the template, not only from a file, which is usually the case when you get started with FlexCel. I also have functionality to load the template from a resource that is included in my executable, which is something you might endeavor to do. You don't want people make changes to your templates per se. You might want to offer that, but sometimes you don't want to, or you want to store the default templates inside of your executable. So that is possible using a resource stream, for example. And that's why I work with streams when I think of the template. And the same thing with the file that I create as the report. It's all going to be streams, and the stream is either going to be file format wise an Excel document or a PDF document. Okay, but let's start from the beginning. I know this is a lot to take in, and I want to keep this video focused on the most important stuff. And you have the product documentation of FlexCel and the trial version to look into the details. And I'll also give you some more food for thought after this video, how to dig in a little bit deeper if you're interested. So here I have the method that gets called when we click on print, which is called generate a report for album. And I pass in the album instance of type T album. So this object, let's use code completion here to make it very clear what this has to offer. It has all the information of the album to offer, for example, artist name, the name of the album, but also, in addition to the track count, it also has a property tracks, which is the list of all the tracks. So after loading the template, I'm not going to go into the technical details, just think of that I load this template, the Excel files, as a stream. I'm not using anything FlexCel specific, I just load the contents of the XLS file, which is the template, into a stream. I can use a file stream, for example. And then here's the first thing that is FlexCel specific. I create the FlexCel report instance, and this is what will contain the report generation. And the first parameter here, honestly, I think this is because FlexCel developed over time. It's a product that has appeared for the first time in the early 2000s. The allow overwriting files is a flag that if I would set it to false, I would not be able to make changes to the Excel document that is wrapped by the report. And that doesn't make any sense to me. For a report, this has to be true. So in order to make changes to the data of the report, we have to specify true here. And this L report has the method add table. And you might say, we're not working with tables, you just told us we work with a data structure. If we look at add table, you see that there's so many overloads with different parameters. Well, let me expand this right here, that do sometimes refer to a data set. The first one refers to a data set or to a virtual data table. That is also something specific that FlexCel has to offer. But if you scroll a little bit down here, the generic version allows us to have a T-list of that generic type. Or alternatively, you can also use an array of a generic type. It doesn't have to be a list. So with this in mind, you see that we can specify T-track, which is the type of our data set, and we name it tracks. And the content of that, the list, is aalbum.tracks. And you might wonder, why do I add this data? First, we were talking about the album, and that's exactly the key thing to remember. We are going to iterate the tracks. That's going to be our records that we are going to list. But still, we want to have in the title, on top of that table, we want to have the information for the album. And as we just saw inside of the template, we have album title, album artist name as tags in our template. And you set them really, really easily. You use LReport, which is your report generator, and then the method set value. That allows you to set using or specifying the name of the tag in the template. you specify what value is supposed to be shown. And if you look at code completion here, it's called T report value. Think about it as the T value that we have in Delphi. It can be anything, and FlexCel provides all the implicit data type conversions that it can be a string, an integer, and all other data types. And you can apply it to album title, album artist name, and to album notes. And you see, we don't have anything to worry about with regards to formatting and how the text is going to be aligned. It's all determined by the template. It's going to be centered and bold. This is going to be just centered. This is going to be left aligned with a smaller font, with word wrap in place. This is all handled by the template. We don't have to do anything. We just set these values. So this is literally all we need to do to set or transfer the information from our object into the report. And how everything looks, the design, the appearance, that is determined by the template. A little bit tricky, but also not that difficult, is the album cover. The album cover works the same way, set value, and what is a good value for an image? Binary information. And binary information indicates an array of bytes. And the most straightforward thing I can think about when I think in bytes and binary data is the class tbytes stream, which I can use to save the image that we just looked at, the tpicture. Tpicture has a save to stream method, and as a target, I specify the tbyte stream. And the tbyte stream has a property, bytes, which represents the binary data as a binary array, which I can assign to album cover. And then FlexCel is able to interpret the image that is inside of that binary array. Thankfully, PNG, JPEG, all these file formats are supported by FlexCel. And if you might think, which file formats does FlexCel support? Guess what? FlexCel supports whatever file format Excel, Microsoft Excel supports. So don't even worry about that. If you want to have one of the common file formats, JPEG, PNG, I think even Windows meta files and all these things are being supported, then your report supports that file format. The key is if you set it as a value or as part of the report generation, it has to be a binary format, a binary array of bytes that then can be interpreted by FlexCel. That's it. So we also create this array right here, and as soon as we set the value, we can free the stream so we don't incur a memory leak. And with that, the top part of the template is covered. Now to the final part, the table. And the table, if you look at it, I only define one line of the table, and this line is being iterated or repeated for each and every single record or list item. How do you tell FlexCel that this row right here is supposed to be iterated? Well, look in the name of this. You can define ranges, named ranges to be precise. If you're uncomfortable using this top left box right here, there's also, if you go to formulas, the name manager, and there you can see all the different names that are available. For example, the print area is also defined and is taken into consideration by FlexCel. If you print your reports or if you preview your reports, the print area is what determines how wide your page is, just like Excel would do. So this is the name underscore underscore tracks underscore underscore. And that is the syntax from the documentation of FlexCel. So tracks, you might remember it looking at the source code, is the name we use. That's how we identify our data source. So album.tracks, the list, is being identified by tracks. And this is here in the template as the name for this range, for this row. And underscore underscore indicates that for each and every single record in this list, this row is supposed to be repeated. And underscore underscore also indicates that the rows below will be pushed down. meaning if you have more content following here, which we don't have, this would be pushed down. There's other options instead of underscore underscore that have different behavior. For example, that you not move in this direction, that you move in that direction, horizontally, for example. There's tags that can be embedded for master detail reports and all these things. So this really is the simplest form of a report by specifying the range right here, using the name of the data source. And then inside, let's start with something simple. Again, using the HTML opening and closing indicator, and then a hashtag tracks dot, which you always have to specify the data source first because each report can have multiple data sources, of course. So hashtag tracks dot, and then the name of the property, track number in this case. If we look at tracks, you see that this matches the property name. So track number, then we here have the name, and note that I also call row height out of fit. That means if the name of the track or the name of the artist requires more space, it's not simply going to basically go into the other column here. No, instead it's going to increase the height of this row automatically so that everything fits nicely. Also, I think if we go to format cells, I said, well, you might have wrapped text here. So it not only extends the size of the row, it also wraps the text nicely. It's left aligned all the time. And you can even use it inside of, this is the nice thing about it, you can even use formula, and the trick here is, if we go to the left, see that row number A is missing. I'm hiding a row, and I use the value of this. If I show it real quick. So here tracks disk number, and I don't want to show that all the time. So by default, I hide this, and then this column has the formula if the current A14 is the same as A13, then insert an empty string, otherwise insert the disk number. And that way, I only show the disk number when it is different than it was before. And that way you can even use Excel formula to show certain things or don't. You can use any formula that you want. That's what makes FlexCel so powerful. This is a very, very simple example. There's so many more things you could do. You can also use all the features in the toolbar to color. Conditional formatting is also available. For example, if a certain threshold has been met, you can use a different color. All these features are supported and also transfer into the report generation. Okay, so the final fields are duration readable and release. Duration readable, you might think, what is that? Well, of course, I use the property here as a read-only property to format it the way as a string as I want my duration to appear. Of course, I don't want to just, in a report, I just don't want to show, hey, this is 120 seconds. No, I want to show 2:00 to indicate that this track has a length of 2 minutes. These things you can do in your properties, in your data model, and just supply what you want to your report. And with that, we can go back over into the source code, into the report, and guess what? There's no code necessary. You just say report run, because you already assigned the data source tracks, so all these iterations can take place with the data provided in the list. FlexCel automatically will pick all the different items on the list and generate a line, a row for each of these items and push everything below down. The output, of course, has to go somewhere, so I create a memory stream, and that memory stream then is used to store the report that has been generated. And what I also do, I create another Excel document, which is represented by TXLS file in FlexCel, to create a new Excel document of the report. So I create a new TXLS file using the stream the memory stream with a generated report. So at this point, my field XLS file inside of my reports class stores the report. And then at that point, I can use that file to show you right here, fxls file dot, all the methods that are available in FlexCel are available, but the most important one is save. So I can save my generated report to any file name that I would like as an Excel document, or, and this is now the final part of this tutorial, I can also convert it to PDF. For that, I use the FlexCel PDF export class and create it with the XLS file inside of the constructor. I pass it in there, and then I simply call lexport.export, which exports the contents of the Excel file, in this case, into a stream. And the stream, of course, I then, depending on what stream I have, I use the abstract class here, so I can either pass in a file stream or a byte stream or whatever I need to get the PDF into the format that I need it in. And that's the whole magic, how to create reports with TMS FlexCel. If I could trigger your interest in using FlexCel for generating reports, there is a written explanation of this in my first hands-on book called Hands-On with Delphi, cross-platform, multi-tiered. So you get a multi-tiered example. You use an X data server to deliver the report. So you can use it in any application that you would like. You can even use it in web applications. And multi-tiered database applications, web, desktop clients, REST, JSON, server, and last but not the least important, reporting. This book has FlexCel information in it and puts it all together, how you can even use it with a web service if you're interested to dig deeper. Also, remember there's quite a few FlexCel targeted videos in this very YouTube feed at tmssoftware.tv. And if you're interested in more FlexCel videos, please give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments what you would like to know about reports in the future if this topic is interesting to you. I promise you the very next video, but one of the next videos will then feature also the preview. Like, how can you create this preview window quickly? And it is really not that difficult creating this window here that displays the information of your report inside of the application. And then you're also able to create buttons to save the report or in a certain format, for example. We'll all do that together in the next How It Works with Holger that deals with FlexCel and reports. Take care.